Welcome to Common Mansplaining, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome back, Christian. How's it going?
Always a interesting week. These are historic times.
Boy, they are. They are that. All right, so we're going to fire this right off. So today we're going to talk about the differences in the two sides in a broad sense, but we're also going to talk about what's changed in the two different sides of American politics in recent years. As many of you have heard me say many times, Trump has had a transformational effect on American politics. He shifted the polls. Hey, Star, how you doing? He shifted the polls, and what used to be just very simply, Republicans are conservative, Democrats are liberal, has kind of transformed in a variety of ways. Now, a lot of people will still call anything Republican conservative just by virtue of the fact that it is, in fact, Republican. But when I say conservative, I kind of mean like a classic conservative and a classic liberal, like hearkening back to the days of my parents, right? So the conservative that I grew up with. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's fueled this shift, what the parties stand for now, what changed in their respective stances over time, which party is more open-minded, because this is like a classic tug of war, right? And last but not least, the one that's really under contention this week, which party is more violent? All right.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I want to start off by saying that there was a video that you guys probably saw on my channel. It was a short video, but an interview that Tim Pool did not long ago with Konstantin Kisin, and where Tim Pool said, listen, the left party is often prone to violent extremism. And, one of Konstantin's co-hosts says basically, well, yeah, you might point to, a couple of wackos on the left, but I could still point to a couple of wackos on the right. And Tim Pool immediately refutes it, said, no, you'd be wrong. And this is why. And he speaks out about literally 10 or 20 different people that have moved from the left to the right in recent years, including our new MAGA leader, which is Donald Trump, right? For first and foremost. And it's this change in politics that we're going to discuss tonight. And so one of the key things is that Tim Pool mentioned in that interview, not in that video, but in a different part of the interview, is that the left has this checklist of 20 or 30 different views that you have to hold.
Orthodox views, yeah.
Right. And if you don't check off every single box on that list, you're not only not left, you're far right or alt-right, right?
Yeah.
Which is why so many people like Joe Rogan, who's effectively a center-left leaning person politically, or Tim Pool, who's center-left politically, or Elon Musk or Matt Taibbi.
Elon Musk, yeah.
A bunch of these guys are left-wing, but because they don't check off every single box, the one box that they don't check off is oh, this is an alt-right guy. This is a far-right guy. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So,
even being just slightly open-minded, oh, Trump seems not as bad as I thought. He's a legitimate president. Oh my gosh, right? Everything, the left is policed him. And this was, I don't know if you read Jonah Goldberg, but he had a book he published, maybe pretty close to 20 years ago now, Liberal Fascism.
Oh, wow.
Right? Okay. That really packs in how you can come in fascism from a liberal side. And part of this is, not being open to compromise, having insisted on orthodoxy, vilifying, having outrageous, responses to any type of questioning or disloyalty on any issue, right? And not being a big tent party, right? So when I have meaningful memories of my life back to the '84 presidential Reagan Mondale campaign.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, you're old.
And yes, I'm old, but and I have a good memory, but it was always very cast at that time that the Republicans were the party of the elites, of the wealthy, of the hoity-toity, and the big tent party was the Democrats. That is definitely one of the upheavals, right? That is not the case today. Now the Republican Party allows people to have different ideas. You find Republicans are more likely to ticket to I was going to say, what's the term? Not vote straight ticket, but to flop, to pick the candidates, alternate parties on a ballot, not just vote straight party line.
Yeah,
right. For that. It's evading me right now.
A single party ticket or whatever, or party ticket or something like that.
Well,
right?
yeah, but when you're open to evaluating a candidate beyond, just the party loyalty, and so like North Carolina, which is a very conservative state and tends to be very Republican, voting for Trump, things like this. Tickets split. Maybe that's what they call it. Voted for Trump, but voted for a Democrat governor because they didn't like the Republican who was running. They didn't like the candidate. And so definitely the right is more open to that, and we understand that. We understand that there's going to be people, right, who don't appeal to everything that Trump is doing, they don't agree with, or his approach, especially some people who agree with his policies but hate his ham-handedness, or people who think he should be more conservative on different things, stuff like that. Still, can come together, be on more. There's compromise within the party, and we allow for people. We respect that people have these different sort of veins. Some people will. They'll denigrate them, call them rhinos, right? They're Republican in name only, but there's not any real consequences for them. They're certainly not deprived of, support and in any meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. So to answer Tanya's question, right, these labels, right, of far right, alt right, they're actually designed particularly to try to dismiss half of the ideas in the nation, right? So because if you can effectively label somebody as a radical, right, that word just has such heavy weight, such heavy connotation in American politics. It's like the moment you can successfully label someone a radical, they are no longer worth listening to. It's like they're no longer worth taking seriously. And so, so that's what they use these words for.
It's the opposite of practical. It's the opposite of practical. It's like we don't really have to consider that idea. We don't have to debate it. We don't have to take it seriously.
Right, exactly. So, so if you're right, it's just another cudgel, right? It's one of many, many cudgels that the left has devised over time. But so just to name a few, right? I just want to name a couple of names, right, of people that were recently Democrat who moved into the Republican Party, right, to move under the big tent ticket, right? Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Colin Wright, Tim Pool, Matt Taibbi, Mike Schellenberger, Joe Rogan, Donald Trump. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on.
And you wonder about if Tim Cook or Jeff Bezos, other those that came to his inauguration too, they're not politically public with their politics, but if they're coming around too.
And they used to they used to be. So a lot of things have shifted over time, right? And one of the things that that Tim Pool was discussing in that interview is he say, here I am, a moderate leftist. I'm Tim, and just to give you guys some background, Tim Pool he's pro gay marriage, he's pro heavy government regulation, he's anti big corporation, he's pro big taxes, he's pro social entitlements, he's pro choice, he's if I didn't know any better, I would call him a Democrat, right? But because he's pro-gun rights, which is really kind of a fringe, political discussion at this point, it's not one of the major topics that we even discuss. Yeah. And because he's kind of critical of wokeism, that's the big one, right? And because he's critical of wokeism, he's 100% disowned. It's like people ask a Democrat about Tim Pool, they're like, oh, he's far right, he's fascist, he's a Nazi, right? It's like, oh my gosh. And so they use these labels.
Yeah, just identity politics too, that people of color should automatically be diehard to dedicate to the Democratic Party, that they should question everything, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and one of the great things about Tim Pool is that he is he's definitely like agreed with Charlie Kirk in that ideas should be discussed, right? Ideas should be like talked out. And they even had, I think they had a huge event at one point in time where Charlie Kirk had like the biggest event of the year. Charlie Kirk had him out on stage and they like, talked issues and found almost inevitably what we find is there's more agreement than disagreement between two reasonable people who are willing to talk things out. The ones that I have a tough time finding agreement with are the ones that don't ever take that time to try to find out anyway, right? Like the ones who just...
Well, and this is right. The point of the channel, for those of you new to this channel, we're common men and we're speaking to issues that affect common men and have an insight into things. And one of the things is that we're obviously on the lookout and skeptical of are the elites. And the elites in the Democratic Party definitely encase themselves in a bubble where they broker no other opinion. They come up with it. This is the virtue. This is the thing, and you get in line, right? Yep. Or you're an all right. And like Jen Pataski, right, and others like who have come out of that and tried to become media personalities. It just exposes like what a bubble they're living in. Yep. And I think a lot of the rhetoric this week, trying to say that Charlie Kirk's killer was not left wing in his political objections to Charlie. He definitely objected to Charlie's political worldview. That is undisputed. Wasn't from the right or on the left. Undoubtedly, the common man, most people know it was from the left, but the left is trying to say it was from the right. And if they speak to their own bubble, their own bubble will believe them so much. Yep. Right, to have those people not have a crisis of identity crisis, like, oh my gosh, right? I think that's why this is really just trying to speak to their core thing so they don't destabilize that core 20-25% of the far left progressives.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so for a situation like this where the true facts are basically obvious, right? And you shouldn't even have to guess, right? Like you shouldn't even have to like dig into it to really know. Like one of the things that I try to tell people to do is like to reserve judgment, right? I say like don't make any assumptions unless it's like really, really, really heavily slanted and there's actually a cost for not making the assumption, right? Well, this is the situation where there's actually a cost for not just assuming the guy's on the left party, right? Like, obviously, this guy, the only reasonable explanation for going after someone like Charlie Kirk is for ideological purposes. So to assume that it's anything other than someone who is opposed to those ideologies is just... It's like just lying to yourself, right? So,
he wasn't buying your family farm or foreclosing on your family farm or trying to,
Right. Yeah. He's not a politician, so he's not actually like executing a policy that might have put somebody out of work or something like that. No. So then you have these people online like Jimmy Kimmel who will, and this is the game, right? So if they say it convictively enough, right, with enough like confidence, they just say, oh, of course, this guy's a conservative, a far left, far right Trumpist fan, then of course, then it's like if those people never go out and do the work and try to figure out the truth for themselves, and all they hear is somebody who they perceive as a trusted source, like Jimmy Kimmel, someone who's very popular, and all they hear is, this one piece of information from what they perceive as a trusted source, then of course they're going to believe it, right? And if they never go out and do the work and try to get the information for themselves, if they never take the time to learn about who Charlie Kirk was, and this is one of the big ones. I actually just finished a video, it'll drop tomorrow, but I actually spent a whole bunch of time picking apart every single quote that the left has used to slander Charlie Kirk and smear his name and to try to depict him as somebody that he isn't. And I've basically debunked every single one of them as false, as depicting something false, right? Because of course they want to make you believe that he's a racist, that he's a homophobe, that he's a transphobe, that he's a white supremacist, and blah blah blah. All the typical names that the left uses. And each and every one of those is just false. And so I went through and I got every single quote, and I'm like, no, this is not what they're saying it is. Obviously, you can see that now that you've seen the entire quote in context. But the problem is most of America doesn't do that extra work, right? So that's why we're here. That's why Common Mansplaining is here.
That's why. Well, and for Jimmy Kimmel, I want to talk really quick. If Jimmy Kimmel had said, maybe tweeted out what he'd said, or if somebody had come up to him on the street and asked that would be one thing. But he went on ABC, right, on his official thing, and reported a news. This is news. Oh, this is still like, if there's any question, he came out like he had a scoop, like he had an inside source, and basically was reported as a news source. And Trump has a history, right? He has sued ABC News for being fake news, and they have settled with him. $15 million settlement at this point, right? And so when somebody's coming out with fake news, Jimmy Kimmel doesn't know that. He is trying to portray a narrative. He's trying to hope. He's trying to posture. He's reporting news that is not news. Right. With authority in an official way that the FCC can and so his own people at ABC News, I think they threw the fit over too. It's like, what is this guy doing? Right? If they weren't even saying that, they're like, and the common man, are not fooled by this. We 100% know, right? As much as they say this is not changing anybody's mind that wasn't going to vote for a Democrat if he was a blue dog, right, up against Trump, right? The blue dogs, right? But for millions of Americans, this is who are slightly open-minded. Now this is starting to crack, and they're trying to see, the right is the place for open-minded people. Right. The right is the place where we don't hate. We don't kill somebody for ideas that disagree with, that we dislike.
Right. So one of the things. On that note, right, one of the polls that I was looking at is how each party self-reports how open-minded they are, right? Like how people on the right report. So because historically, the left would have claimed that feature, right? Historically, the left would have said, we're the party of open-mindedness, we're the party of empathy, we're the party of being tolerant, and blah 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 blah. And maybe even historically that was accurate. I don't know, honestly. It's one thing to claim it, and it's another thing to be it, right? But they would have claimed it. They would have at least claimed it. And historically, the right would have been much quicker to say, nah, I don't like new things, right? I don't like change. I just want things to be the way that they work, and the way that they worked perfectly for, hundreds of years. So, but the right was very commonly able to self-report that they were less open-minded. They were more principled, more centered around conserving, which is
more skeptical of new ideas. Yes.
Right. And now the interesting thing, though, is that the polling has shown that actually the parties don't even have a significant difference in self-reporting anymore. Now they both claim to be open-minded, right? Interestingly enough. So and actually the conservatives have claimed to be more open-minded over time. The liberals have claimed to be less open-minded over time. So now that they're right at the same place, which is very interesting. So that was one of the polls that I found was interesting. Another study I read recently that was interesting was that, and I can't remember who did it, but they basically organized American political movements, like groups, into 9 different groups. Okay. And 6 of those 9 were essentially in the right camp, in the conservative camp, whereas only 3 were in the left camp, which means that there was just more diversity of thought on the right-hand side than there is on the left-hand side. And there's actually been several studies to confirm this too, that the right just they're far more likely to both be diverse of thought. They're also far more likely to engage with diversity of thought. They're far more likely to, reach across the aisle and to have conversations. Those conversations aren't always pleasant, but they're far more likely to at least have the conversation, right? I actually did, I don't know if I told you this, but I actually did a study myself once, not too long ago. You guys can actually probably still find the video on our site here, on our channel, where I debated against 30 conservatives and 30 liberals, right? And I kept on going until I could achieve 30 conversations on each side. It actually only took me 42 attempts to get 30 debates on the right? It took me 89 attempts to get 30 debates on the left, because the moment I would say, because either no matter which side I was talking to, I'm saying, hey, you know, I'm the other side and I want to pitch some ideas to you. I was always very respectful. I was always like, you know, hey, I just want to talk about this, you know, see you guys are talking about gun control, or see you guys are talking about critical race theory, and, you know, I just want to pitch some ideas at you, right? And almost invariably on the left, the moment I would reach out, it'd be like, block, like immediately. Most of them didn't even speak another sentence to me. It was like the moment I introduced myself as not having the exact same ideals they did, block. And I'm like, and some of them would give me like 1 or 2 sentences, but then the moment I would disagree with like a position they took, like, actually, that's not true because this study or this study, they're like, no, you're a racist, and then block. You know, like they would insult me.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. But on the right, it wasn't like that. On the right, they enjoy and get a part of this, you know.
Well, right. Again, this is my long-standing statement about how the parties approach politics, is that the left approaches it from an emotional side. Yep. And debate is injurious to them emotionally. While the right approaches it from a cerebral analytical side. And so we're more open to take in more cerebral analytics, study it, and see if it fits, and be able and feel confident that we can rebut that or see, you know, what's wrong with it. But emotionally, and we're not emotionally identified with that politics to the degree that people on the left have made their personality, their core worldview, be wokeism.
Right. And now, to be fair, and this is, for those of you who have been following the channel for a while, they'll know I'm a little bit more moderate than most conservatives. So I'm probably what I would call center right. But I kind of wish that we had the best of both worlds. Like, if it were possible, what I'd love to have is people that make decisions based on logic, but understand the emotion behind it, right? Like that, you know, that'd be like the best case scenario, right? Where you have like a bunch of people who make policy off the logic, off the information, but appreciate the way that it's going to make the left feel, you know, and it's very difficult to find both, right? That's just a hard thing to do.
I think what it is like, wouldn't it be great if the world was like this and we could just have a policy like this where we just tell people to break the law, here, just come, don't break the law anymore, and come back to the court date on this time, but just go home and don't break the law for now.
Like the herd.
And like that, we can do that. I wish society was like that. But then what we realize is like that we don't live in that world. That's not reality. And so what we have to do is we have to govern according to reality, not according to what we wish reality was.
Right. So with that in mind, I do want to discuss some of the changes that have taken place on the different parties over time, right? So I'm going to start with the left. So these are positions that I perceive that the left used to hold, but doesn't any longer, right? So the left used to be anti-big corporation, right? Just basically categorically across the board. The stigma was that the right was always afraid of the government getting too big, and the left was always afraid of businesses getting too big, or like individual people with money getting too big. Yeah.
The real issue is the fundraising basis. Classically, in the 70s and 80s, for the Democratic Party, Democrats were trial lawyers. And Republicans were corporations. Sure. And so when they would get in power, Republicans would like have tort reform and try to make it harder for lawyers to amass a lot of money. And when Democrats would get in power, they'd have all this corporate stuff to make corporations have less amount of money. That type of classical funding base doesn't exist anymore, you know. So it's not lockstep that all lawyers are Democrats or all corporations are Republican. But for a long time, that was part of the thing, was because that was the fundraising base of the Republican Party.
That's what I mentioned that too. It's like, like a lot of this is probably because of the donor class and how it's shifted over time. Part of this, though, is that, like, you know, is principled, though, because the left for the longest time would say, like, you know, we're too worried about businesses being large. That's what they would say, at least, right? Even if it was backed by a hidden motive, right? An ulterior design. Yeah. But like, meanwhile, they're like, no, the businesses are going to get too big. You know, people are getting too rich. That's the line. That's like the party line. But now it's like they're basically in the camp of big pharma, of most big tech, like basically any company that signals, like virtue signals that they're woke in any way, they're okay with it, regardless of how big the company is, right? Like with the exception of Elon Musk, basically the entire tech sector is left leaning, right? Like Zuckerberg.
And yeah, Silicon Valley, they pride themselves on being really like radical. This is the far left San Francisco wing of the Democratic Party. So in their moderate, the rest of the country Democrats, Silicon Valley is definitely like, hey, let's try this crazy idea. All right. Yeah.
Right. And so another one too is that the left used to at least claim to be anti-war, right? They used to be like, peace and
for any reason. Any reason. You can never justify war. Any reason.
Right. But now it's like they're very hawkish, very interventionist. All of a sudden it's like, and to be fair, that's like basically across the board. But if there's any resistance to war, it's coming from the right. And usually from like the more conservative bracket of the right wing. They're like, but the left is like, oh yeah, sure. Should we get involved in Ukraine? Sure. Should we get involved in Israel? Sure. Should we get involved? Like we have to stop everything. We have to police everything. And it's like, all right,
yeah,
guys,
the Suez Canal. I'm like, there are people around there with armies that can police the Suez Canal.
Right. Right, we're not the only army in the world. And okay, and so this one is another one too, right? So the left used to be, if anyone, was like the party of free speech, right? It used to be that the right was more apt to come down on somebody because of any kind of like treasonous message, right? Like any of the anti-war messages were kind of like cracked down on by the right. Like a lot of the Vietnam peace hippies were cracked down on by the right. A lot of the World War II, the Korean War, anybody who was trying to speak out against the government, it still was pretty lax across the board because of our Constitution. But if anyone was going to crack down on free speech, it was going to be the right wing. Now it's like everywhere I look, it's like, that's hate speech. We can't do that. You're talking about trans people. We can't do that. You're going to, misinformation, disinformation. You're telling lies. We can't have that. It's like, all right, guys, like I've never seen the kind of overreach on free speech like the Twitter files ever in the history of America.
Yeah. And really, you understand this. Marxism is actually the perfect way to understand this because it comes down to power, right? Yep. When the Democrats are out of power, they are all about free speech because they want to be able to say whatever they can to get. But once they get in power, right, they become very insecure. They realize, their margins are thin. The country has a bias and want to go the other way, and so they try to use their power to clamp down on that. And when they don't have official power, right, they're out of power now. They try to use their institutional power, right? The elites, the media, universities, right, that can silence and make everybody feel like there's only one way, only one worldview, and shut down this debate. Use their institutional power.
So to respond to SD said free speech is okay, hate speech is not. There's a difference. So I just want to be clear that everybody understands this. Legally, there is no such thing as hate speech. There's speech that's protected and speech that isn't, right? The speech that's protected is basically everything that doesn't directly and immediately hurt someone's life, liberty, or property. Right. So the things that would hurt somebody's property, like slander, libel, right? The things that might hurt somebody's life, like a threat to violence, an imminent threat to violence. If it's not a direct and immediate threat to any of those things, it's just protected speech. Now, there is speech that communicates hatred, right? And there's also speech that doesn't try to communicate hatred, but that people are offended by. That happens a lot.
Yeah, your perception that the other person hates you.
Right.
Or the other person, right? This has become a slippery slope, right? Like racism, where it's like I disagree with whatever that person is saying, so it must be hate speech, right? So this is the boy who cried wolf. The left has cried this far too much. The common man rolls their eyes. It doesn't get our attention. Like before, if you said hate speech, we'd be like, wow, and we consider it, maybe take it seriously. Right. They've used it so much. We know it's like, oh, you just heard something you never hear heard in your bubble, and you're just trying to like have an emotional response. We roll our eyes like you're a 2-year-old. So hate speech has lost its ability to tamp down speech, and so they're looking for something new to use. But they love when they were in power in 2022, the height of woke, they could call something hate speech, and with a cudgel, like you said, like come down and bring all of their power to bear against that.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because nowadays we get a glimpse of what things might look like and how dangerous things might be if we capitulate to this sort of like what Canada did with Bill C-16, where they tried to like literally tell people what they can and can't say regarding pronouns, and like what England does, what the UK does with regard to like, they have, what do they call it? Like the false communications offense and malicious communications offenses and all this nonsense that means you said something we don't like. It hurts our feelings. And look, guys, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that everyone should go around and try to hurt people's feelings with speech. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think you should always speak with love and grace when you can, right? But you should also not fear to offend just by virtue of speaking the truth, right? By speaking the truth, and especially expressing political conversations, you can't just worry that someone might be offended by that and have that like affect the way that you talk.
Well, I mean, right, there's never been a point in this country where there hasn't been political divisions, people disagreeing about where the laws should be, right? How the government should go. Where should we spend money? What are our biggest threats? These obviously, you're going to have different ideas about that. So we do, with us not being a monarchy or an autocracy, we have to have this Republican form of government, and it's supposed to be the crucible of ideas. By having opposing parties, by having an opposition, we're supposed to the ideas compete, and the best the ideas that are impractical or that are fanciful or bad kind of should get winnowed out, and then you bring a majority of people along to support you, right?
Yep.
And I mean that's what it is. That ideas should win out over time through debate, right?
Yep.
And to attack that is to attack the whole American experience. If you don't have that, then you need what Democrats say they hate. You need an autocrat, right? In the absence of debate, if everything's hate speech, if you don't have freedom of speech and new ideas, what you need is an autocrat that can who's benevolent, ideally, who just decides every policy and there's no debate, right?
Right.
That's not America.
Right. You have to have speech in order to have a free country. Without that, you don't. That's the epitome of the American experiment. Yeah. Absolutely. And then the last thing that I wanted to say was that the left used to be, or at least used to claim to be, what they would call the party of the poor. Right? They would be the party of the people. Like it used to be back in the day that if I had to pick a side to represent the marginalized, the down and out, I would pick the Democrat Party. Right? Whether or not their policies actually assisted that group or not is a different question, but they would at least try, right? Like and that's why for the longest time, Christian and I will say there's value to the opposition party, right? Somebody does have to stand up for the little guy. The funny thing now is that's the Republican Party now, right? Like it used to be the Democrats. It used to be the Democrats were the party of the poor. Now it's like the Democrats are almost exclusively the party of the rich, of the elite, of the affluent. And the Republicans are like we want the non-elites. We want to help out the people who aren't, doctorates or filthy rich, right? And that's
we want to create a social structure where middle class and working class people can survive, can thrive.
That's it. That's it. It should be, and it's amazing to me that it's gotten to be like this. It's that these are kind of pivotal. They're very like polar shifts, right? These are like very large shifts. And the right has some too. I want to just briefly touch on those. Mm-hmm. So the right used to be what I would call anti-entitlement, right? They used to be like principally against any kind of handout, any kind of entitlement. No, they just don't really ever mention it. Probably because it's just not popular, right? Like it's just not popular enough and they'll lose too much political capital. It's not that if you were to corner an individual conservative that they wouldn't still say, no, this probably isn't a good idea. But like as a politician, like they just can't say I'm cutting Social Security. If they do, the moment they say that, it'll be like he's getting primaried next year. So that's an unfortunate difference, an unfortunate change. Another one that I used to credit the right wing with was being for free trade, right? They used to be very free trade. obviously Donald Trump has changed that a lot. Tariffs are a principally anti-free trade policy. I'm not saying they're not working, but they're definitely not for free trade. So you just have to.
My thing on that is, I think the Republican Party would love to get back to a free trade, but we can't close our eyes that other people aren't doing free trade, and for us to get back to something, we need to react to that. But again, this is a different approach. It hasn't reacted. The markets have not reacted exactly the way that people expected they would. Right. The U.S. has a lot more market power, though the left is trying. There are a lot of news stories trying to portray, any type of negative consequences to this. That if a farmer is not able to sell his corn to China, it's because of Trump's tariff policy. If one thing type of thing, but he's more about creating a social structure. Ideally, right? We bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Right? Yeah. We have fair deals where we can have very small tariffs, but our products aren't tariffed when we try to sell them overseas in a fair marketplace. We'll see. I mean, just because he would like it that way, he sees, wouldn't it be great if the world was like that? I have to tell him the same thing. Look, Donald, I'd love it if the world was like that. Right. But we have to live in the world it's now. So, what are we going to do? He's decided, let's try this, and I'm willing to give him. Let's see what happens. Right now, as far as 2025, I've been right and you've been wrong. If you'll be honest about it, the consequences. Now we'll see in a year if those have changed. But for right now, your skepticism about what would happen, we have not had runaway inflation, things like that.
Oh yeah. For the left.
But it's time for the tariffs to go to Congress. Really, is the next step. And that's what will be really debated. Right now, they've just been used as a tool for negotiation.
I've never said tariffs wouldn't work. I've always said I have no clue. I have no idea what was good. But yeah, they've definitely become the demon of the left, right? It's definitely become like you see a kid crying on the side of the street. It's probably because of Trump's tariffs, right? Like a kid has to be crying because. But no, I've never said the tariffs wouldn't work. I've said I had no clue. But I just knew that I didn't like them for a principled reason. But I kind of accept the fact that they have achieved some things, some good things, right? And probably some bad things too. But it's always going to be a trade-off at the political level, right? That's just part of the game. And I do accept that.
The one thing the left and the media especially don't want to give Trump any credit. Right. So especially for his negotiation, or they'll downplay when he rises the trade deals and then drops his tariffs against Vietnam were like 100%, and then they made a deal, then he dropped it back down to where almost nothing, and they're like, oh well, so I mean, and every deal is not going to be a home run, right? But he's trying, and this is a different approach. We're willing to give the benefit of the doubt and see where it goes. It hasn't been the negative things that the leftists like to see, but they're looking for that. They really want to find any type of sob story they can lay at the door of
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's even been, there's been like major economists, like heavyweight economists, that the whole time they were saying, no, this is going to be a terrible idea. And then have had to actually go back and retract their statement saying, actually, he's kind of outsmarted us all. Like that was, Torsten Slocker said that. Anyway, so both parties have kind of shifted their stances, right? And they have definitely changed some of their positions. The one big one that I want to preserve on the Republican side, if there's one thing that I could say, listen, this is a stance we need to keep, we need to stay this way, we need to never change. It's a very disconcerting change that I'm seeing over the last week, and that is, we seem to be trying to edge into cancel culture, right? And I want to say that just for the record, when someone says something stupid or even celebrates violence or something horrible like that, it's terrible, it's retarded, but they have a right to do it, right? And so we need to accept that. I mean, it's not like the right doesn't say stupid stuff sometimes. It's not like there aren't extremists on every side. When the left says something horrible like that, you have to accept that they are allowed to do it, right? And understand now, if they get fired from their job because they violate one of their own company's policies and their company makes a company decision, that's between them and the company. And I'm never going to say
government does nothing.
Yeah, I'm never going to say that the company shouldn't do that, right? Like every company I've ever worked for would have fired me for celebrating somebody's death. Every single one, right? Like, and I would have been severely punished even by the United States Navy, which is a government entity, because there's rules of decorum, right? But I may not have been like fired. I may not have been like discharged, but I certainly would have been
chewed out.
Oh yeah, I would have had a company mast, and I would have been in trouble, right? I might have even taken a demotion. But like, just understand there's a difference between when the government does something, when a private company. But even so, even if that's a private company's decision, we shouldn't be influencing that. It shouldn't be like one person says something online in the privacy of their own home, even if it's public, and then everybody who knows who that person works for starts calling that company and saying this person needs to be fired. That shouldn't be a thing that the right does. That should be a thing that stays between that company and that person, and we should just stay the heck out of it. If they say something horrible, we can tell them they've said something horrible. But that's it. That's the consequence. The consequence should be social. It shouldn't be like we try to get that person canceled. We try to delete that person from various industries.
Okay.
We try to get that person like hunted. That shouldn't be the game that we play on the right.
I agree with you to a point where people just say something and they post something where they're saying it. There are the ones that I've sort of said are like somebody setting up a shrine for Charlie Kirk, and they go over and they knock over and try to destroy that shrine, right? Flip off everybody that's there trying to is. No, the government's not coming down on this person, but people, right? The woman who did it, they tracked her down, and in her company, she was fired from her job and things like that. She was more than just speaking. She was deliberately trying to be provocative to people, and it wasn't like she was posting in her home like this her feelings about Charlie Kirk. She was going and engaging in an aggressive way.
Yeah, she's an asshole.
I guess one thing, people are sensitive right now because Charlie Kirk has been silenced. We will never hear new Charlie Kirk content.
Sure.
The rest of our lives, and that was done through an extra legal assassination. It wasn't like he had a car accident or a disease or any type of thing. It was a homicide. He was murdered by another human being directly because of his speech, and so you've already silenced him. If you disagreed with him, you've already won. He's silenced. Be magnanimous and let us mourn.
Well, that'd be great.
Right? And so yeah, I can see if people are making a post on TikTok or something like that, you're free to leave a comment that you disagree with them and it's in poor taste. But yeah, canceling that. But then they have people who are going to any type of vigil trying to stand up and disrupt that in-person agreements. I feel like that they're trying to instigate violence from people that are wounded and trying to heal. And that's the type of thing when people want to step in and say, look, we don't want this to escalate. So please say what you want to say. We have the internet. Go to the internet. That's the place to say it.
There are some kind. I mean, I don't know exactly what the rules are, but there is some kind of there are anti-provocation laws in various places.
Well, public order. Yeah. The city ordinances, but it's not like the federal government can clamp down on you for a counter protest. But if a city says, "Oh, that crossed the line into you're trying to get them you're trying to pick a fight."
So I want to address something that Matt said. Matt's he says that error has no rights. So this may be true from a philosophical point of view, right? It isn't true from the legal point of view, right? So legally, philosophically, morally, you may be correct, but legally in America, there are a great many things that are legally protected, regardless of the fact that they may be morally incorrect. But
I tell you, the American flag is red, white, and green.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
the U.S. government cannot come after me. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can tell people all day the American colors are red, white, and green. Right. That is a lie. That is an error. Right. I am free to lie and spread that error with zero consequences from the American government. So I have a right to that.
And another thing that Matt said too that I just want to address, because it's a very common sentiment, is that the chickens came home to roost, right? This is a common sentiment at the moment, right? Because we're all feeling a lot of pain and anger from Charlie Kirk's death. The game is, right, like, we'll say no, cancel culture is horrible, but then the moment that they do something that merits being canceled, we'll say, well, look, you guys did it. We're gonna bring it back at you, right? Like, so if you can't dish it out, if you can't take it, don't dish it out. The problem with that is, I feel like one side should maintain that moral high ground, right? So I don't like the concept that you criticize in someone else and then go behave that way yourself, right? And it's not that I don't disagree. Like, I mean, I'm right there with everybody else wanting to see the people who say these horrible things get punished, right? I'm right there feeling that way emotionally, but I just never would be in that. I'm never going to put myself in that situation where, because they did something evil and mean to somebody else, that they should then have that evil thing revisited upon them. No, that their judgment's between them and God.
Here's the thing. Actually, my wife and I had a conversation about that. There are, and this is not conspiracy theory made up, there are deliberate, like North Korean, Chinese, Russian, right, who are geopolitical allies. They have troll farms. They have buildings. They have people whose job it is to try to sow dissent in American culture, right? So they're coming into, they see these divisions, the things are raw. Maybe this cancel culture, this could be, you could be manipulated by some North Korean or Russian hacker who wants you to hate your fellow American, rather, right? They've spoken in poor taste. They've said something emotional when when we're feeling emotional now, which is not normally our thing. There is disinformation out there. There are people who want to divide America, and they're going to use this. I think, any knee jerk or anything of dogpiling on. And so we need to be very careful, like just trying to cancel somebody because somebody said, hey, this would be fun. Let's find this person. We're the internet. We've done this before. Let's wreck this person's life.
Dox them. Yeah.
Right. Dox them, everything like that. Be skeptical. You might be being manipulated by people that want America weaker, because that doesn't make America stronger.
Very true. Right. And you got to be careful these days, right? Like, the AIs are pretty capable. Like, I could very easily see someone taking somebody they don't like and then creating a video of that person doing a thing that you might then get them canceled for. And then, like, it's hard to take some of this stuff back. Like, if that person gets fired from their job, for, supposedly saying something in public when they weren't even actually saying that thing in public, it's just an AI video. I mean, we live in dangerous times, so just be careful. Like, this is why the behavior is, keep yourself under wraps. Follow the same moral values that you would have others follow. That's the golden rule, right?
Yeah. Be skeptical of the elites. I would wonder, what do the elites want right now?
Right.
The elites want to, do the opposite. The elites want us to think that Charlie Kirk's killer was a leftist. We're not buying that. Right. What else do the elites want? If we become too vengeful in this cancel culture, we lose the point, of our open-mindedness, of that the right is right because we're correct, not because we're more powerful, not because we're better at getting people corrected. It's because this is the right way to run the government. And so this is common sense. We're governed by common sense, not by fanciful ideas, that we need to stand up to the radical Marxists and the progressive left, right? So let's just bring it back. The elites want us to lose the mark. Let's go back. I always say honor Charlie by voting.
Yes.
Right? Voting and by remembering his ideas and being skeptical of Marxist ploys that make America weaker.
Right. All right. So I want to talk about which party is more violent, right? Because this is the classic struggle, right? We're seeing a lot of tug of war going on, right? The moment that a violent thing occurs, then of course there's this battle, right? Everyone's trying to thrust that guy onto the other team so they can say, look, the Republicans are more violent. Look, the Democrats are more violent. Look, right? And even if they accept that this guy was in fact a leftist, which is so blatantly obvious, I can't imagine anybody actually trying to contradict that. Even if they accept it, then the game is still a whataboutism, right? It's still like, well, what about January 6th? Which, oh my God, I swear to God, if I hear that one more time, I'm going to lose it, right? And what about January 6th? What about the guys that killed Melissa Hortman? What about the da-da-da-da? What about, all right? And I guarantee you, for every what about, you can find a counter what about too, right? Like, there's just so much violence in the world that you would never run out of that list. So like that's a rough game to play. But I'm going to play it anyway.
Okay.
Since we're on that topic, I'm going to talk about a couple of polls that I saw over the last week, right? And these are very, when I saw these polls, I was flabbergasted, right? I want to pitch some of these numbers at you. I'm going to try not to make it too boring. So YouGov did a poll that basically checked to see, they say basically they got 2,600 people together. They say, look, how do you find it acceptable to perform violence to reach your political goals, right? Now, 6% of conservatives said yes. There's like 5 brackets. You could be very conservative, moderate, liberal, or very liberal, right? And so both the very conservative and the conservatives, 6% said yes. 9% of moderates said yes. 17% of liberals said yes. And 25% of very liberals said yes. So if you do the math, what that means is the more liberal you get, the more likely you are to think political violence is okay to achieve your political goal.
Okay.
Right? Here's another one. Right? The next question was, do you find it acceptable to celebrate the death of a political rival? Again, very conservative was 3%, conservative was 4%, moderate was 7%, liberal was 10%, and very liberal was 24%. So we're talking about, again, the more liberal you get, the more likely you are to relish and celebrate political violence. So I for anybody out there who's playing this game like there isn't an asymmetry between the two, for anybody pretending like the conservatives are the more violent party, maybe they were once upon a time. I don't know, but they darn sure aren't now. It's not even close. 25 and 24%, that's a quarter of the daggone group. That's a huge group. That is a huge population. Can you imagine? Like, I got lots of liberal friends. 25%?
All right, here's my response. I think they've been conditioned. Maybe you've heard this, like, if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you do it?
Right.
Right?
I've heard that.
And the lesson is, oh, yeah, and there's all kinds of cartoons that do. I wouldn't. You can't kill a baby. Yeah. What you would do, what the right would do, you'd go back and you'd buy all of Hitler's paintings and be like, you're a great artist. Let me get you into art school. Anything you paint, I will buy. And so you'd end up with a bunch of mediocre paintings, but then Hitler becomes an artist, right? But you can't kill an innocent child, even if he grows up to be Hitler. But the left, right, according to the Marxist things, is right. Anybody that opposes you getting to this communist utopia must be eliminated. And there's statistics. They're just right. When you value human life, which is a very conservative idea, right? You try to find another way, right? Yeah. And that's why there's so many people that hate Jews that are artists, because as soon as if you do an art application and you say you hate Jews, you're getting accepted to art school, right away. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
art school's terrified to turn you down right now.
I'll spare you guys the advanced temporal theory, right? Of course, of obviously this whole go back in time doesn't really work, because the short version is there's only two options. One, you go back in time and you can change the past, which isn't really one of the options, right? But if you could, you'd create a new timeline. So that future Hitler, just you being there, would change the fact that Hitler probably wouldn't do that. But the other option is, if you could change the past, like if you go back in time and you can't change the past, then you probably already did and tried and failed, so it wouldn't matter. But yeah.
Well, it's a moral question. A moral question that the left uses to condition themselves to, right? Oh, the greater good would be in killing this child. We'll treat greater good. And you now all of a sudden you start saying, oh, the greater good, leftists, by killing this one influential person, Charlie Kirk assassinated, I'm doing a greater good before he can become president of the United States and things like that, right? So we need to definitely say we are against killing baby Hitler, right? If you have that thing where buy his paintings, find some other way to be nice to him, right? But you don't kill an innocent child.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Right. So, and this is maybe what a great argument against the utilitarian moral worldview, right? Like you can't just do things simply because you think it might bring about blah, 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 blah. You have to just do the right thing. The means is just as important as the end, right? You can't just do things based on the end. So, right. Obviously, I mean, there's more polls that I read that are just as disheartening, if not more so. But like the bottom line is, I mean, just to bring this one up, Destiny was just online the other day, and he said, I quote, "You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events." I mean, this is the demon that we're fighting against, right? If you can have an entire side, and this is like Destiny's not
just peace. They don't want peace.
Right. Destiny's not some fringe dude. He's this massive following. He's like a progressive, like mainline progressive with this massive following. This isn't just like us randomly stumbling on an extremist who has this quote. This is like, oh my God. You know, like I want those who are in the audience right now that are on the left to understand this. There's something wrong with the party if the entire ideology is producing numbers like this. If everyone on the left, like 0.25%, you know, somewhere between 10 and 25% wants this kind of violence. And again, this kind of violence is the last thing we want. But I just would caution that you're barking up a tree that you don't want to go up. I promise. Like this is just not what anybody wants, right?
We don't want to live in communities. Yeah, we want to live in communities where we're safe to take our families to dinner, to part, and to be in public, to say what we want, and not worry that just because somebody guesses or identifies us with a group that they're opposed to politically or have different ideas against, that they're justified to use violence against us. That is That will result in everybody being armed to the teeth and everybody going out like that is the definition of antisocial rhetoric and behavior, right? What we want civilization, and that's anti-civilization. Civilization is like we're talking about Rome, that you could walk freely around the Roman Empire, the roads, because they were police, because there was law and order, that you wouldn't be harassed.
And well, here's something I want to. This is my appeal to the left, right? All right, because if you've got, this is what drives me nuts. If you're the party who has this magical checklist of things that you have to do to fit inside your party, and if you don't like fit that magical checklist, one of those things on the checklist should be nonviolence, right? Like, I implore anyone out there who has any kind of influence or pull. If you are one of the 75% who isn't calling for this violence or who isn't celebrating it, right? Make sure that when you encounter that 25%, that you say, no, bad. Like that should be the group. If there's any group that you thrust into the extreme and try to call radical, that should be the group. That should be the group that you say, listen, you guys aren't exemplifying the highest ideals of the left. Now, I think it's very telling that we're not seeing much of that. We're not seeing many of the 75% say that 25% is unacceptable. We're seeing one or two.
Fetterman a little bit was.
Right. We're seeing one or two. Like Fetterman, Bill Maher, you know, like maybe like this random smattering of people who I would basically call centrist anyway. Like they're not even really left-leaning.
Yeah, I got you right.
You know, so like the more, and again, like the more liberal you get, the more apparently the more acceptable this becomes. And this is, I think, very indicative of the Marxist project in the first place, because I mean, what do they chant? Like no war but the great war, right? But the war.
Well, this is what we're seeing. They become infinitely tolerant of their perceived allies, i.e. the homeless, habitual criminals, right? And become exceedingly intolerant of their perceived political opponents.
Yep.
I.e., the common men,
or even people who are like mostly their political opponents, but just aren't in one area, right? The moment they see someone who's like a political rival in any framework, it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But anyway, closing thoughts on this, Christian?
Well, I think Charlie Kirk, again, the influence of this is still rippling. It's still flowing.
Definitely.
Right? It has not ended. And we will be seeing this for years and years to come, but it has exposed things, and it's opened the eyes. The scales have fallen off. I see more people are open to the ideas of the Republican Party now. But they're open. They're willing to hear what we have to say. Let's have good things to say. Let's know we need to say, and let's bring them on and make them lifetime conservatives and reliable Republican voters. Right now, the Democratic Party has sort of disqualified themselves from being taken seriously as a ruling party, right? And that's fine for the short term, but long term, we need an opposition party to hold the Republican Party or the ruling party accountable so that we don't become corrupted. We need a real alternative. We don't need a crazy wingnut left that we can't trust. We need them to moderate their positions. Otherwise, they're going to be out of power for a long time. And we know that's the one thing that will motivate them. So if we just instruct them, if you want power, rein in your left, ditch Marxism, become more centrist, and fight corruption. That's the thing. If you want people to unite to you, fight corruption, both within your party and outside your party.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, just real quick, I want to address something Mr. Sloth said. Mr. Sloth said that this was not a political violence act, Charlie Kirk. See, this is where I get the point where I get to the place where I feel like the Democrats are like in another world, like living a different reality. Mr. Sloth, not only did the governor say this, his family said it, the Discord messages show it, like literally every piece of evidence that we have encountered has demonstrated this was a political act. Not to mention
common sense says otherwise.
Not to mention, right? Not to mention the fact that there is no logical reason to kill Charlie Kirk except a political one. Like, can you give me a single reason to do it? This guy didn't know Charlie Kirk personally. It wasn't like Charlie Kirk slept with the guy's sister, right? Like this, there's no reason to do this except a political one. So if you're in the mindset where you can think this is anything but political violence, guess again.
He was about to reveal the hidden Masonic treasures with the lost scrolls of Alexandria.
Yeah, why didn't I think of that?
And the secret conspiracies had to kill him. Yeah,
he hated Charlie Kirk's speech because it was political. Think about what you're even saying. Look at what you were saying and process it logically. If he hated Charlie's speech, it is because the speech is a political speech. Wake up. Wake up. Come on. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little bit animated.
I mean, but this is some people will close their eyes because they don't want to admit the truth. It's easier for them to try to believe, an easy lie than a hard truth. But the hard truth is that the climate created by the leaders of the left emboldened this person that it was appropriate for him to act out and murder Charlie Kirk because of his opposition as a symbol for things that he opposed politically, right?
Yeah.
And the sooner the left owns that and begs for forgiveness, is ashamed of that, the sooner that people will trust them. The longer that they try to insist, oh no, it wasn't about leftism or anything we did. We've done nothing wrong. Or saying we need to keep going the same way we're going. More people are going to get off that ship and realize that's not who we want leading our country. Certainly, right? And hopefully the next step, obviously they're not leading our country, but leading our cities. The next big revolution is for cities to turn from Democrat mayors and local Democrat leaderships to realizing we can't have these people running the wheels of government. They're irresponsible, and vote in your elections, especially those in New York, right? If you care if matters all to you, save your city.
Yep. That's it. All right. But anyway, guys, that's all we had for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Look for my video tomorrow. I'm gonna publish all of the myths about Charlie Kirk tomorrow. I'm gonna debunk them, each one of them, one by one, because the left is still trying to perpetuate this slander, this smattering of Charlie Kirk's life, the smearing of Charlie Kirk's life, trying to indicate that he's a racist, a fascist, a blah, 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 all the left words that they use. And I'm just going to go through each quote one by one, give you the full context, and so that you can hear what Charlie Kirk says in his own words, so that you'll know he's not a racist, he's not a bigot, he's not a white supremacist, he's none of that garbage. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.